Well, we're going to go now to the next segment about disappearing New York, and Corey Kilgannon has set this up. Now, Corey, who are we having on? What's the clip we're going to be playing right now? And how did you come upon the story? Because this is a part of disappearing New York. A lot of people think about, I was just reading Katz's Deli is saved, but only by they sold the air rights above their place on Houston Street. Everything else was knocked down on the block. A big high rise is going up. The gas station at Lafayette and Houston is now going to be a high rise. The bodegas are going. I mean, right before our eyes, New York is disappearing. New York we knew, and this is a little niche that everybody of a certain age would have used at one time.
Right. It's just it's all just one big glass tower now, right? But there used to be these things called payphones, and you had to put a quarter in, and that's how you made your phone call. But and of course we remember them. But there's a generation of kids who just walk by them every day on the street and
wondering what they are.
Yeah. Whether they call them those lollipop. Obviously the glass Superman style phone booths that were popular and ubiquitous in the city in the 60s and 70s. They're almost all but gone. I think there's 3 left on West End Avenue up by you.
The ones with doors.
Yeah, the ones with doors. You could go inside the booth, the glass booth.
And then you couldn't get out because the door jammed.
The door used to open, it folds towards you. So if you're not like some skinny little thing, the door is opening towards you and you're almost stuck in the
thing. You were in there forever.
But it was a great thing. Remember, they had the tray, you could put your quarters on it, or you lay out your little phone book, and it was a little bit of moment.
And there was the directory was hanging down.
Yeah, you swing up the directory. No one even uses directories anymore. I know I get the phone booth. They deliver it to our building, a stack of them, and they go unopened. A big plastic wrap. No one takes one of them.
There are no white pages anymore, are there? I mean,
I think
pages. Maybe they're combined.
Huh? Yeah,
they're all yellow pages, right?
But what's the clip we're going to play right now?
So we're gonna hear the clip. We're gonna hear about two minutes of a
it'll
maybe
be 3 minutes anyway.
A short clip, which is taken from Dead Ringer, which is a short film co-directed by Alex Clement, who we're gonna talk to in a minute. And you're basically going to hear a phone booth grousing that his day is now his day is done. Basically, he's inactive. He's obsolete in a city that now relies on cell phones.
We used to run this town. For decades, we handled all of your drug deals, love affairs, runaways, pimps, crime tips, cranks, heavy breathers, and emergencies. You name it, we heard it all. On a good night, we'd get 4,000, maybe 5,000 ears. We were even movie stars, some of us. We protected Tippi Hedren from the birds. We helped Bill and Ted travel time. And without us, Clark Kent he's just Clark Kent. But we were more than all that. We were a symbol of something. The last chance for any privacy in these streets. People used to want that, Privacy. People used to care about that. But nowadays, privacy. Not on those little gizmos. Those things, they got into your brains. They've eaten away your conversations, infected your relationships. They've stolen your daydreams. A single second of silence, of nothing happening. You can't stand it. You can't help it. There you go again, feeling around your pocket for that little thing. First thing in the morning, last thing before bed. You addicts. In my day, text was just a noun. In my day, a phone was for one simple thing. You don't want to use us anymore? Fine. But do you even see us anymore? We're in the middle of everything, Right here, still, with all your bike lanes, your rooftop vegetables, your speakeasy mixologist bars, your throwback barbershops, your artisanal this, your organic that. You want authenticity? You want that old New York the kids say they miss? We were here when the checker cabs got knocked off by the Caprices, who got knocked off by the Crown Vics, who got knocked off by these little Japanese toys today. And when that Hurricane Sandy came, and your apartment was flooded, and your battery was dead, and your gizmos glitched out, who'd you come running to? And now I'm invisible? You know what it's... I'm sorry. I flew off the hook there. It's just, I don't know if you know this, but the city's getting rid of us for good. Trashing some of us, turning others into some kind of touchable televisions. It's over for us. Us and all the other guys around here whose time has passed. Lonely, invisible, forgotten, just like the last few people we still serve. Well, you know what they say. Old phone booths don't die. They just fade away. So long. We'll be waiting for your call.
Okay, and that's here on WBAI 99.5 FM. That's this. You've been hearing the audio from a short film called Dead Ringer, which premiered earlier this month at the Tribeca Film Festival. And we have on the line one
that was a phone booth talking.
That was a phone booth talking. Yes, it should be. Yeah, I should clarify that.
It made me weep.
Yeah. And we have Alex Clement on the line, who helped direct and make the film, and he recorded the audio and he wrote the audio that you heard. Alex, thanks for joining us.
Hey, how are you guys doing?
Good. That was great stuff. We had to dip the sound there briefly because there was an obscenity uttered, and we can't have that on the air. But
child-friendly radio.
I think people got the idea that this is, these phone booths are just so rarely used anymore, and if they could only talk, they'd probably, I don't know if they'd be happier. Listen, maybe they don't have to work as hard. They're not being used. I guess that's the upshot. But we also have, along with Alex, we have Mark Thomas, who started this interesting project called the Payphone Project back in the 90s, which is a kind of a compilation and an online listing of the numbers of New York City payphones. So Mark, thanks for coming on as well.
Hi guys, how you doing?
Did they use the Shakespearean line, "Lend me your ears"?
Yeah, you should. Lend me your ears. Right. That could be.
If you lend a payphone your ears, it'll keep it. That's the thing. They don't give it back. You remember when?
That's right.
Not just quarters,
Well, that's right. Yeah.
So I should just mention that Mark was going to call in from a payphone just to keep the whole thing authentic, but you can't call into these payphones. And you used to be able to call a payphone back and stuff, but apparently, I guess maybe you can't do that anymore. Maybe the numbers are scraped off, or that function has been.
They've been changed.
Yeah, changed.
No, all the payphones in New York, or virtually all of them, are programmed to reject incoming calls.
I see. Remember, that was a big drug dealer strategy, right? They would work out of a payphone, right? And I don't know if that was the reason that they stopped.
Oh, that's true. That's always a common behavior associated with payphones was, seedy elements of society hanging out by the payphone.
Right, but you can remember using them and running out of quarters and asking if you're on with someone, just call me back. Here's the number, and just being the way you could talk for a while.
Yeah, well, they got rid of that because as usage declined and they started making less money. They blocked the incoming calls because there's no way to make money on an incoming call. Yeah. So they had to sort of button up as best they could.
And some bars, I don't know, Malachi, if you had, remember bars with a payphone, they would basically use them as the house phone.
We did, yeah. We did. I remember that. Yeah. Oh, my God. I forgot
about that. There's a number of bars and pubs that still use the payphone as the house phone.
Right. But I also had the situation in one of where they wouldn't put phones in the men's room and the ladies' room. They said because it was restricted public.
Oh yeah.
And they would only put one phone outside, not in any of the men's room or ladies' room.
Uh-huh.
That's interesting. I was just at the Oyster Bar at Grand Central, and I noticed they had a couple of old abandoned payphones in both the men's and the women's room individually. So that must be left over from before.
Yeah.
I think, Alex, you may have reached out to me about your film, which I'll have you describe in a second, but because I had written, I guess it was last month, that they were upgrading then they were restoring the last three, I guess it is,
that's right,
like Superman glass enclosed payphones in the city, which are on West End Avenue at 100th, 101st, and 90th Street, right about there. And I was going to say, but you know what? Everyone says those are the last phone booths. But if you talk about indoor phone booths, similar phone booths where you can sit down and close the door, there's a lot of them in indoor places in the city. It's just not on the sidewalk anymore. Like, I can remember working, for example, there are a lot of places, but for example, I remember working at the Queens Courthouse, and we'd have a few reporters there, and we'd be using cell phones at this point, but they'd run into the phone booths and use their cell phone to avoid getting scooped by each other, you know. So, I mean, it still served the privacy function. They just wouldn't be lifting the receiver off the payphone. They'd be using their own phone, which I thought was a funny segue, you know.
Right.
But,
yeah.
Yeah.
Mark will know this better than I do, but I think that there's a couple thousand indoor phone booths left in the city. Isn't that right, Mark, or something?
Well, we can only estimate. I don't know about that couple of thousand, but certainly in the high hundreds.
Oh, okay.
Probably the best known set is at the New York Public Library. Right. And on all three levels, they've got some of the old-style wood booths. Mm-hmm. And the Old Town Bar near Union Square has an old booth in the back, but it's sort of shut off now from usage. But yeah, a lot of the older pubs and bars have the old-style wood phone booths still there.
Right.
Alex, why don't you just tell people what Dead Ringer is and how you got the inspiration to do it? You know?
So Dead Ringer is, as you heard, a sort of the last cry in the night of a dying phone booth. And we got the idea. We came across that statistic that you mentioned, but there were only four Clark Kent style phone booths left in the city. They're all on West End Avenue. The one you missed is the one on 66th Street, right, which is the subject of our film, actually. And so we kind of thought, you know, how do we dramatize the kind of change in the city landscape, but also, you know, make it relevant to how, you know, the human landscape has changed, right? People use cell phones; they don't really talk to each other anymore, right? So we try to do both of those things at once, you know, in a way that was sort of funny and dark, and you know, I hope it works.
I remember waiting when I used to wait for, on the street, waiting for somebody to get off the public phone because I had to make my call, but of course they were very involved in whatever they were doing. And so when you studying people on public phones then would give you an indication of what was going on. So I knew that I was no hope when the person making the call leaned against the part of the phone booth that was available, and I knew then I absolutely bollocksed when they crossed their legs.
Right.
Settled in. Goodbye, no chance ever, because the guy was on with his girlfriend, and that was that, or the girl, in the case may be. So that always indicated to me that I was that I had no hope of ever getting on that phone.
Right. I remember that behavior very well.
Of being on and being like two or three people like outside the booth or outside wherever it was, sighing and pacing around and expressing their annoyance.
And you're shifting from leg to leg yourself.
Yeah.
And I remember one time I was in Dublin, and I was waiting outside the GPO there, waiting to get on a public phone, and the guy was going, and after about what seemed like an hour, he said, "That's it. That's what's happening, and that's the case." That was it. I said I should put that in Latin and put it over there.
Right, Veni Vidi Vici, the other the payphone version.
Passive conversation.
Right. After a bunch of
and one of the other things that went on with the payphones was a lot of some of the homeless or the con artists would put paper up there to block the coins from dropping down,
right?
And they would just get stuck there, and you would be clicking down, the money wouldn't come back. Then when you would leave, they would pull it down and then get the quarter out. Mean, that was a bit of a con artist too.
You don't see it much anymore, but people used to. People in need of change would always just go, walk down the street, just checking every coin return, and then you get them. They could find them.
Everyone, that was it.
Yeah. So
well, one thing that struck us, so first of all, when we started making this film, we realized that even though nobody sees phone booths anymore, everyone has a great story about. Everyone of a certain age, right, has a great story about a phone booth, right? So it was kind of, we were kind of moved by the idea that these payphones, which are still everywhere. I mean, I would tell people I'm making a film about phone booths, and they said, "Oh, do those things even still exist?" Well, I haven't seen one of those in ages, and there's still 6,000 or 7,000 left. So just the idea that these things became invisible years before they actually started disappearing, and of course they are disappearing, was kind of compelling to us. And then you talk to people about it, and they've got these great stories. Everyone's got a great payphone story. So.
We called them kiosks, telephone kiosks.
Right.
Yeah. And I guess they're converting them to more high tech, touch pads, and they're doing this stuff now. But let me just get Mark into this. Mark, what is the payphone project? How did that start?
It started back in 1995. I started compiling a list of every Manhattan payphone number and location I could find, and the purpose was to encourage people to call those phones and make random contact with complete strangers. And I published them to my website, and it really worked for a long time. People were calling the numbers and having all kinds of crazy encounters.
Why you got feedback on this? People would tell you stories that.
Yeah.
Would you have a comment section? Would people write to you or something?
Well, people would email me. There was sort of setting up comment boards was kind of primitive in 1995, but it worked. And over time, I discovered that there was a whole cadre of people out there that, for whatever reason, had been collecting the payphone numbers and locations in their cities and in their towns. And people just started sending me thousands of numbers all around the country. And then all at once, I got monstrous contributions of databases were sent to me by telephone company insiders and law enforcement. And next thing you know, I had 250,000 numbers all across the country. And the purpose of the project changed from then on. It became a resource for law enforcement and for tracking down runaways and for solving crimes. And it sort of had an interesting run during that time when there were a lot more payphones across the country.
Right. I mean, because it's kind of like a database of nobody's phone numbers, right? I mean, because they don't belong to anybody, but I guess they do. They work out belonging to people who tend to appropriate them for their use or whatever, right?
Right. People would make calls from payphones thinking that they had a veil of anonymity and that nobody would be able to tell where they called from. And I don't know. It didn't make a lot of sense to me that should be such an easy option.
Yeah. So you must have heard some pretty crazy stories of like serendipitous connections and all that kind of stuff, huh?
Yeah, it's been a while since I've read that old stuff, but people talked about a woman called from Australia and had a long conversation with a gentleman on 57th Street, which apparently devolved into a tawdry subject matter.
Well, this is the stuff we want to hear. This is what I'm getting at here.
About something you couldn't do in a phone booth.
Wait, you bleeped the four-letter word from
What can you not do in a phone booth? I mean, there's a good question. What can not be done in a phone booth?
Yeah, a four-letter word beginning with PH.
No, but I've kept an eye on the world of the public telephone, and it's obviously evolved quite a bit. And I'm keeping a close eye on the Link NYC project, which literally is replacing payphones. They're just routing them out wholesale now and replacing them with these devices.
Yeah, as if we need more, internet devices, right? I guess.
You know what I'm saying?
Doesn't everyone have that on their phone?
Well, I don't know what everybody is. I think the stat is like, as Alex mentioned to me the other day, it was only a couple of years ago that penetration of smartphones reached 50% of Americans. Mm-hmm. And it's not like everybody has one of these things, but what I'm seeing with these Link devices is though it's like a breeding ground for the people that used to hang out by the payphones. It's a whole new behavior. People are rolling out their desk chairs and sitting by these things all day. And I'm not exaggerating. I've seen people sit by these things for 6 hours, watching movies, listening to music, charging their cell phones.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And I don't know.
It's free Wi-Fi. It's free internet.
It's this, the digital divide is being bridged, but you got to wonder when people are going to start complaining about the loitering and the noise.
Yeah. Okay. Well, gentlemen, it'd be nice to keep talking. We have a bit of a full plate, but I do appreciate you coming on. And just why don't you, Alex, just remind people how they can access your film. It's on the New Yorker website for one thing, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it started streaming on the New Yorker's screening room website yesterday, so you can go there and check it out.
I mean, they would Google New Yorker and Dead Ringer film, right? Or
yeah, I think that's the way to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And Mark, is the project still alive at all, or is this kind of it's coasting at this point, or what?
No, it's going strong. Like I said, I'm covering the next phases of the public telephone, so keeping an eye on the developments of public telephony so much more than payphones themselves. But I still spot payphones around. They're still around. They just put some new ones in at Penn Station. So.
And what's the website?
Payphoneproject.com.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, gents, thanks a lot. Thanks for coming in this morning.
Thanks so much, Corey.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
And